Hello friends, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. And today I'm in Luminar Neo and I'll be talking specifically about radial masking and how to use those in Luminar Neo and how I'm using them to really get the best possible results with my photos. Now, I did a recent video all about all four different kinds of masking that's in Luminar Neo. A link to that video is there. And in that video, I used a radial gradient mask or a radial mask, but I only used it kind of briefly and didn't talk much about it. But what I want to do in this video is just kind of dive into that a little bit more and show you how you can really use it to shape the light, the color, all that kind of stuff in your photo and get great results. So let's get into it. I've got a photo here, and if you look in the Edits tab, you can see I used Develop Raw and Super Contrast already, and both of those were applied globally. So there it is before either of those two edits, and there it is now. And what I want to do now is use radial gradients in a few different places to really control the light and the look of the photo. And it's really good at that. I will admit that in the past, I didn't always use radial masks that much because it starts out as a circle and you can make it kind of oval shaped. And I used to always think, well, everything's not really circular or oval shaped, so why use it? But the truth is, it's really, really useful, especially because you have that gradient zone that kind of extends the mask and helps it blend into the area around it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into masking. I'm in Develop. I've already used Develop Raw and Super Contrast. So now this is a second use of Develop. I'm going to get the radial gradient and I'm just going to drop it right here and start with that little circle. Now you'll notice the mask is outside, so I always click Invert. And then I'm going to come in here and shape this mask so that it covers this area down here below that I really want to cover. Okay, so something about like that. Now you can see there's inside this original circle, which by the way, if I move it up, you can see it looks like that. But the cool thing about radials, of course, is that you can kind of drag them outside of the frame to give you unique looks to your photo and just to make sure that you're hitting only certain parts, which is what I'm doing here. So you get the full effect of the mask inside that circle, and then from that line to the outer line is kind of the gradient zone where you can drag, or excuse me, you gotta get a hold of that. You can drag to adjust that and make it look a little bit different if you would like it to. I'm going to go ahead and just make it about like that. And what I want to do here is go into adjustments, and then I'm just going to drop the exposure. All I want to do is create a little bit of more darkness over there in that section, and I'm going to add a little bit of smart contrast as well. So maybe about like that. And if I show you the before, you can see that bottom right corner is quite a bit brighter. And after, now it's kind of a little bit more in shadow. It's a great way to control the light by using Develop and the radial mask. And so having done that, I'm going to go ahead and close Develop, and I'm going to click it to open it again. And this time I'm going to go ahead and do a similar thing, radial gradient, but this time I'm going to work up here in the sky. So once again, I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to invert. And then once again, I'm going to spend a moment here getting the mask really shaped the way I want it shaped to cover a lot of that sky. Okay, so once again, I've just kind of moved that around, stretched it out. It's falling way outside the borders of the photo, which is totally fine. It's actually how I need it to land. And what I want to do is create a little bit of darkness in the sky. So once again, I'm just going to pull this down on the exposure slider just a little bit, maybe like a 0.3, just a little bit of darkness. But if you look at the before, there's the sky without it. And after, there it is again. So able to really control the implementation and the way the light is falling in the image. And I feel like we're getting there. Now what I want to do is go into color harmony. And for me, if you look on the horizon just above the level of the sea, there's a thin strip of color, and I want to go enhance that color. So once again, I'm going to get a radial gradient, and I'm going to drag that in here across the center. And again, I need to shape that. So invert. And I'm going to stretch this out and make this really wide and really narrow just to get it looking the way I want it to look. So I think something about like that looks really good. That's going to cover the area that I want to cover. And now I want to go into adjustments. So just a tiny bit of brilliance. So maybe like a 6 or 7, and a tiny bit of warmth as well, about the same, maybe a 5 or 6. And split color warmth, I'm going to do a little bit on the warmth, maybe about like that. And then I'm going to go into color balance, and in the highlights, I'm going to give it a little bit of a bump towards the red and a little bit of a bump towards the magenta, just creating a little bit more color where the color already exists. And this is a nice way to control it because the bottom part of the photo, and of course the sky, most of the sky is pretty much blue, whereas you have that thin strip of kind of that warm color in between. And all I'm doing is using a radial mask to isolate it and then color harmony to help enhance it. So if you look at the before, there it is without that, and after, there it is. I've just brought that up just a little bit, which gives it a nice little bump. Okay, now another good trick with the radial mask is I'm going to get develop and once again masking and radial gradient, and I'm going to go work on this section here with the sun in it. So I'm going to go about like that, and once again invert. I almost never, I'll show you when I do use it in the regular implementation, but I pretty much never use it that way except every now and then. But most times I invert it so it looks like that. And what I want to do is just get this area that's kind of covered by the sun. I'm going to get this and just create a little bit of an interesting look here. It's a nice little way to kind of pop that area. So maybe about like that. And I'm going to click on the adjustments tab, and I'm going to go over here. I'm going to bump the exposure just a little bit. So like a quarter of a stop. I'm actually going to pull down contrast a little bit. So reducing contrast, it helps create a little bit of a haze kind of look. And I'm going to go into curves. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to lift that a little bit as well. So that also creates a little bit of a hazy kind of look. And then I'm going to go into temperature and I'm going to do that a little bit to the right. So a slight bump in warmth and a slight bump in vibrance as well. So maybe about like that. Let's take a look at the before and after. There it is before. You can see it's a bit more intense there. And after, now it's a little bit more of a kind of hazy kind of look. I'm actually going to take that exposure down just a little bit. So maybe about like that. But if you look at that sun, there it is before and there it is after. It gives it a nice little pop, if you will. And while I'm at it, I'm going to copy that mask. So I'm going to go ahead and click copy because you can copy and paste masks. And then I'm going to go back into develop and go into masking and click paste. And so I just got the same exact mask. But this, so if I show you, there it is. But this is one of those times where I'm actually going to use the radial outside the area, and that's going to be everything that's now in pink because I inverted it. So now that I've done that, I'm going to click show to hide that, and I'm going to go here, and all I'm going to do is just drop the exposure a little bit, and that is like a negative 0.4 or so. And really all I did is just create a vignette. I'm actually going to go maybe about like that. All that did is really just create a vignette. So you can create a vignette using a radial mask and then just the exposure slider. And I wanted to center it around that same area in the sun that I brightened just a minute ago. So it gives a nice little bit of contrast to the photo overall. And I think that looks pretty nice. And the last thing I'm going to do, and this is not going to be a mask, this is just going to be a global use of develop, is just add a little bit of smart contrast here and maybe a little bit of temperature and tint. I don't need curves. Maybe just a tiny bit of temperature and a tiny bit of tint. And these are all just global uses of these tools. And maybe a tiny bit of vibrance, maybe about like that. I think that looks pretty good. I'm actually going to go back one to this develop where I was working on the sun itself. If you look there before and after, and I'm going to pull that exposure down just a little bit more. It's a little too bright, and I think it looks a little bit better if I've dropped that a little bit. I don't want to make too much of a difference, but I do want to show there how the sun is kind of beaming a little bit, and then the area around it is a little bit darker. And using that radial mask with a little bit of brightening and some negative smart contrast kind of creates a little bit brighter, a little bit hazier look. And then that's my overall look here. And I was able to get quite a big difference in the photo. If you look, there it is before, and there it is now. It's quite a bit more dramatic. I've got a lot more color pop in certain areas. And in fact, I think I'm going to go over here, and I think I'm going to pull back a little bit of that contrast. And I actually might lift the shadows just a tiny bit. And I think I'll go to the vignette as well and brighten that just a tiny bit. I don't want to overdo it, and I feel like there's a little bit of too much of a difference. So you got to be careful, of course. And it's always harder live when you're kind of playing with it. But using radial masks, I'm able to easily and quickly isolate areas of the photo, even though the areas aren't really circular. The one around the sun is, and of course the vignette is, but using that bottom right corner and using the sky and that thin strip of color, all those just different shape radial masks that I think really give me nice control over the image overall. So one more time, there it is before and after, and once again the sliding window now that I've made some further refinements. And you can really have a huge impact on a photo by using radial masks, and it does give you amazing control over where these adjustments are going. And that's really what masking is all about. It is a control tool designed to help you be specific and targeted with your edits. That's why I love it. And that's why I use radial mask quite a bit now, especially on landscapes, because there's often specific certain areas that I want to target with certain adjustments. And I always feel like the radial adjustment or the radial mask really allows me to get in there and control it well. So last time, there it is before, there it is now. That's how I'm using radial mask, my friends. Hope it gives you some ideas. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos on masking, let me know what that is down below. And I'll see you in the next video. You guys take care, and until then, adios.